Good evening, everybody. System Chalk here with, I believe, the 43rd episode of our first House of Light playthrough on YouTube, playing as the archaeologist with the sand-scarred journal. I'm the librarian of Hush House, and this journal will record what arose from my crime and my curse. The archaeologist's dearest wish when they came to the house was to record a history where their crime could be forgiven or redefined. But you can complete the game by recording any history. You might wish to begin your studies with a Skolakosophy wisdom. I opened a tomb and found, too late, that it was a prison. The plague that I released is now my shadow, or perhaps I am its reflection. It is too late to set matters right, but it is never too late to protect the future from the past. In Hush House, I can do no harm. Perhaps I can even make amends. So, I'll confess, I normally do sort of a to-do list, and I've noticed that the YouTube series hasn't had a couple of to-do lists for the last little while, but I do see a number of invitations, both here and on my... Excuse me. I see the invitations both on my tablet. It says Strathcoyne, Wakefield, Schaller, Daymare, and Corso. And it looks like Daymare is the only one that isn't actually written down. That may be because I don't have an ink for it. And of course we're at the end of the day anyway, so I won't spend too much time thinking about it. I am a little curious how I thought I was going to get the required knock. Because I don't have... Oh, I do have the shap. Well, am I really giving up a shap to do that? I guess so? No, door and wall. Okay, so maybe it's just the fact that I don't have the ink. We also don't have the marker for having done the salon, so I'm going to... Yeah, I'm going to run on the assumption that we are preparing a... Yeah, we've got the salon here. We're just getting ready for Monday's collection. All right, sorry about that. I know I'm sure I would have... I'm sure I could have figured this all out if I had... if I'd watched the video before, but I almost never do that. Okay. He does a lot with silence, this man. Oh, and we've got a delivery from TR Unlimited. I think I'll just open that up right away. If the thing holding us back on inviting Daymare is the cat wink, then we should... It's not going to... Like, opening the package isn't going to affect that. We will use the Tryst first thing. I think I'll probably just restore the element of the soul after that as well. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there was a situation where I wanted to try and read any more books, and I think probably I should just have the gathering. There's obviously things that we can read, it's just the question as to whether or not that's actually going to help me unlock new branches on the Tree of Wisdom. But first things first, so let's get our last cat wink made so that we can invite Daymare. That'll be Edicts Inviolable with Tryst. Sorry, and the Lunar Globe. So brew an ink that will ward off worms, although only the least of their kind. Now, it's worth remembering this is actually going to be slightly more than 2 minutes, because I'm going to actually need to post the letter and... So, sorry, there's the 1 minute to... Yeah, make the ink. There's a couple seconds to write the letter, and then 1 minute to bring everybody in. I'm trying to think if there's any sense in taking some kind of action. The health, I think, is something that I can afford to give up. But I think I'm just going to try and host some sort of lunch in the Hall of Division. Okay, so yes, that leaves all the elements of the soul occupied for the day. If we get some kind of fancy weather, I may change my mind on that, but yeah, cloudy day doesn't do much. And unwrap, unbox, unleash, so we've got a bunch of almonds. Where do I put these? Still tidier than what I have on my stream, but okay. Yeah, I am a little tempted to try and to pick up some vegetables, but we don't really need to worry until after the salon's done to do that. So essentially we make the cat wink at the desk. For the minute that it takes to bring everybody in, we will for the minute that it takes everybody to come in, we'll restore the tryst, because that is something that I may get called on to use as part of the salon. And then, again, in a pinch, if I need to, I'll commit some things to the Tree of Wisdoms if they come up over the course of the conversation, but I think we're probably going to want to move forward assuming that these are the only elements of the soul that I have to work with. And I'm fine with that. I think this particular batch of characters, based on some of the things that we've seen, I have a feeling we'll have a slightly better chance this time around. It's partly because we've got the Whist, but I've also been trying to keep in mind what aspects they have and try and use that as a little bit of a judge in terms of whether or not they bring in certain elements of the soul. I could be wrong on it. You know, I'm taking a bit of a shot in the dark on this, but it's nice to experiment at this point when, you know, we don't really have a whole lot. Like, all we really lose is the time that it takes to make the eggs, right? So, and the game's pretty forgiving as far as the time use is concerned. So, tuppence will buy me a hearty meal and a quiet place where I can rest and gather my thoughts. It is autumn when the leaves rustle. The silent landlady has served me apple pie with steamed cream in the window nook. Okay. Oh, I also want to get that invitation to Daymare written. So we take the door and wall. We take my book. Alright, I have enough here to craft a letter inviting Daymare to Brankrug. So the real thing that we're hoping to get out of this will be the lessons. Everything else, I mean, the stories are also kind of nice, but it's one of these cases where the lessons are really going to be the thing that sort of push me forward in terms of trying to come up with some commitments for the Tree of Wisdoms. Obviously, languages are the biggest contributor to this, but if I can get a couple of lessons that push me in one direction rather than another, some of these I'm sort of sitting on knowing that I don't have a clear plan. What I mean by that is, you know, let's say that, I don't know, Bosk or Skolakosophy usually wind up being ones that I put a few into. So let's say, you know, 2 through 5 is kind of a... Excuse me. 2 through 5 winds up being something that... It's better if I bring this up. Right, so something like this. The real goal is to open up Skolakosophy 5 so that I can get to Nyctodromi. And so if that's the plot, right, if the idea here is less about what specific skills are entered so much as just what I can get in line, there's a certain paralysis that emerges out of that, right? So one of these things has to be 2, right? So pentaments and precursors would be an example of something that we could put in Skolakosophy. Now, right now, all that gets me is an Arab. So, you know, if we happen to need that for the salon, maybe that'll be a choice that I wind up making. I'll have to sort of think about what my other plans are. But that would be an example of, you know, one of the cases where I'd say, okay, there's not that much at stake here. Let's commit it, and then that means that the other ones for Skolakosophy, well, those need to be 3 or higher. There are a couple that I have a few ideas in terms of saying, okay, these give me some uniquely good things. Edict's Marshal is a really good example of something that gives you, I believe, 2 unique memories. So Edict's Marshal will allow you to get a Wormwood Dream with 10 Moon. And I believe it is also the only one that will give you a Forbidden Epic. So it's helpful to have those. But, again, it's one of these cases, I feel like I say this kind of every episode, but like it's also one of these challenges where if you try and plan out your Tree of Wisdoms in advance, then what you do is you just sort of sit around waiting for certain books, and then, again, you can play it that way. It doesn't... the game's not going to sort of wag its finger at you for playing it incorrectly, but it does mean that you wind up waiting a very long time for things that probably shouldn't take as long if you sort of roll with what the game gives you. So I'm in a bit of a weird place where I do have a few specific things that I want to do with the Tree of Wisdoms, mostly around the idea of trying to get something at a 9 on every branch. But I did want to specifically give myself a little bit of flexibility in terms of where most of the things go. So, and we'll see whether or not that actually produces the effects that I'm looking for. Anyways, let's get this salon under the way. So, the postmistress keeps the gate to the wider world. In her left hand is the lightning, which is to say the telegraph, and in her right the thunder, which is to say the only telephone in Brandkrug. Before her lies the cash register, which accepteth the greater currency and returneth its lesser children. Patience, thus the mountain awaits the fall of the snow, thus Monday awaits the death of the weekend, thus the postmistress waits for me to purchase the necessary stamp. Stamp, envelope, send. So we should post 2 letters in the time it takes us to write the letter to Daymare. The postmistress examines the letter and deems it sufficient. It'll go with the next post, she assures me. Okay, invitation to Father Stanislav. As expected. Now, if it becomes obvious that we're not going to need certain elements of the soul, I would like to use them for other things. So if I can, if I know that I can use a spare tryst, I might go to Crowcross Sands or something like that. But right now, the aim is going to be to just do the salon and focus all of my efforts towards it. Also, I know we don't have everyone for the event, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there is a way to see a little bit more of the further story than I had originally thought. So I think you actually have to hit continue to make the event run by. So I'll be able to show you, I think, Corso's follow-up on the... So I think what I had originally done, where was it? The Royal Endeavor. So we've got Corso, Hokebald, and Serena. So Serena's not part of the group, but I believe if I click on Corso, I'll be able to see a little bit of his story without necessarily committing to it. Okay. So now we just wait for the rest, 33 seconds, and we're going to be waiting 57 for Daymare, so we've got plenty of time. Now, one thing I might do, just to see how this works, I recall that if you have, I think it's lunch and beyond, I'm still trying to figure out exactly how this works, but there are certain conditions under which you get an extra, sort of encounter as part of the salon. So I'd like to see if I can provoke that, and just to make sure that I don't have to sort of re-record an episode, what I might do is I might save just to make sure that I've got the right plot in mind. I don't normally like doing sort of the maintenance stuff on the broadcast, but this is a chance for me to learn something, and I'll show you all as I'm learning. Right, did Strathcoin receive my invitation? Did Father Stanislav receive my invitation? Zachary's here. Corso's here. And finally, Daymare. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick save here. So the reason why I wanted to do this as well is because we have the... where'd you go? There we go. So with Corso, if we add him here and then we click on it, yeah, so it says sabotage. I said my research would upset my friends on the continent. It gets worse. The new king's building something like a manufactured incarnate name, calls itself Phisifer. Now, I'm nobody's patriot. I go where I'm paid, but there's a nasty imbalance of power here, and I think if I were to help my continental friends break up Phisifer and hand bits of him around the various powers, it'd advance the cause of peace. I'm serious. So if you've got Signifer's thing on the Dividing Serpent, or just something decent on Pyroglyphics, that'll help the cause of peace. So there will be two other equivalent ones, one for Hokabald and one for Serena, but obviously we'll have to handle those later. Okay, so it says here midday. Now I'm not sure if I have to do this a bit later in the day, so I'm actually going to queue up the Salon now. And just in anticipation of this working correctly, we'll review both those who were invited as well as what they'll be having. So, Mr. Fraser Strathcoyne, philanthropist, collector, former librarian, a complicated man but not a cruel one. Father Stanislav John Schaller, priest, diplomat, gardener, a soft-voiced man with a very steady gaze. Mr. Zachary Wakefield, marksman, detective, renegade. He has always been a quiet man, but since he left the Suppression Bureau, he has grown even quieter and terribly still, except for his fingers and his eyes, always in restless motion. Signor Corso Reverti, manuscript hunter, legacy scavenger, mercenary. Many would question his ethics, few would deny his acuteness. And Daymare, Grafin Federica, Dagmar Sophia, Teresa Helena Begina von Nagelsberg, if you prefer, she doesn't. And they'll be enjoying a boiled egg, neatly packaged nutrition, pale as a December dawn. Game chips, long before fish and chips, these went crunchily with game. Ideally, you'd want bread sauce and breadcrumbs to complete the ensemble, but honestly, it's hard enough not to just stuff these directly into your mouth. Stuffed pale marrow. This was a marrow redolent of sorrow, now it's a dish to comfort the damned. Roast beef. Our fathers of old were robust, stout, and strong, and kept open house with good cheer all day long, which made their plump tenants rejoice in this song. Oh, the roast beef of Old England, and Old English roast beef. Henry Fielding, The Grub Street Opera. And finally, the orange jumble. They should be the size of teacup rims, and should curl their crisp edges, faintly pink as the underneath of a young mushroom. Lady Jekyll, Kitchen Essays. And then they will be drinking TRN Limited Drinking Cocoa. TRN Spices and Savors Department markets this as the secret sacrament of the last Inca. Schloss Jannings, a dry aromatic white wine. Cater and Hero Second Flesh Assam, a tea from the gland of the real unicorn, imported by Cater and Hero. And Isle Water from Brandkrug's Deep Springs. Oop. Bring light back to the mirrors where once Lady Ava held court. Here one might have lunch in the afternoon or supper in the evening. A good host will provide at least one first course, one main course, one side dish, and one pudding. My guests take their places for lunch. Keep an eye on the salon as it progresses. You will need to add soul cards to encourage the conversation to flow. Different guests will need different soul cards. The more guests, the longer the salon will last. So there should be a little warning that says I get +1 event in this. If I don't get it, I will reload back to it and see if going in the afternoon pulls that off. Okay, lunch and supper last longer than less formal salons, allowing an extra interaction between your guests. Now again, this doesn't necessarily work in my favor because we don't have as many elements of the soul, but I did want an opportunity to test this. So I think when I use the Hall of Division, sorry, not the Hall of Division, the Hall of Voices, that may work a bit differently. Serious discussions, invite a challenge, add a metal card. So good start. Stanislav and Corso speak of Zulfia Zakirova, to whom Corso was once very nearly married, by Stanislav, in fact. Corso tugs miserably at his mustache as he describes her struggles with deliria and her obsession with the whimsies of the wood. Then one day she started wearing wigs and ran off with a piano tuner. Last I heard, she was giving piano lessons in Leipzig. So, orchids and narcotics for that. Conversation ebbs and flows. Say something witty. Add a shaft card. Good start. Fraser inquires something tactfully. Fraser inquires, sometimes tactfully, about Zachary's condition, what exactly he bears within him, what dangers it might present, and what it might become. Zachary answers always cautiously and elliptically. Lesson serpents and venoms. There is actually an interaction with Zachary and Connie Lee, but on the playthrough that I ran that with, Connie Lee stopped coming to the salons, so I wasn't able to see that through to the end. Lively chatter. Inject a little gaiety. Add a core card. Corso and Stanislav speak of the dreams that follow the consumption of the dark liquor called lethe, and their conversations with the moth named Knowing Not. Both of them agree, almost convincingly, that they have always ignored its advice. So that's a second orchids are narcotics for me. I can't recall if I have that already, but that'll be nice to take it up to level 2 if I'm starting. Alright, Wistful Asides, Instincts and Emotion. Add a Tryst card. Dagmar and Corso are arguing good-naturedly about whether Abbot Geoffrey's dialogues on Forculus, Lamentius, and Cardea qualify as proper nyctodromy. Lesson the Great Signs and the Great Scars. So that one I don't think we have. I should probably prioritize these to make sure that I can use any memories that I've generated today. Conversation ebbs and flows. And finally, inject a little gaiety, add a core card. So core is a bit of a difficult one for me. I'm just going to take a minute here with my spreadsheet because I did have a little... Where was it? So I believe I can get core from preservation and birdsong. Okay. Well, technically, both of them are open. Trying to remember. Okay, so that gets me Tryst, so that's not what I need. So let's focus on the birdsong first. So realistically, the only option that I have here would be... Well, actually, Hill and Hollow might be... I'm a little reluctant because that one does give me an option... yeah, I don't feel so good about that. And then the others are 3s, so I don't exactly want to throw away a 3. So I think I'm sufficiently tempted to say Pentiments and Precursors is not one for... Or so I'm reasonably confident in saying that Birdsong is not ready. So my options for preservation, Tradisma Hyra, resurgences and emergences. I feel there's a few here. Resurgences and emergences is a little bit of a tempting one. Although that does get rid of infestations. That does give me a core, though. Okay, I don't think Inks of Containment, Tridesma Hyra, or Menascate Reflections were part of my plan here. Edicts Inviolable might have been an option, but that's now up to 3, so I can't really do much with that. And then I think I already eliminated Hill and Hollow as an... Well, no, actually... I think I said Hill and Hollow wasn't a bird... Oh, hang on. Ugh. If I were to put Edicts Inviolable... Okay, actually, here's another interesting idea. So if I put Hill and Hollow in place for the extra health, and then I committed the Edicts Inviolable... Do I really want to do that, though? Because Hill and Hollow also helps with infestations. Sorry, I realize this making this choice is probably not the most exciting thing for everybody to watch, but I'm trying to... Okay, back to basics. Resurgences and emergences. Okay, so here's the other question. Effective against infestations, so that's a Grail and a Moth against infestations. And I'm willing to guess that with Grail and Moth, and let me just double check here. So yes, it has to be a core. So the infestations we're currently facing require Winter... Okay. So I may come to regret this, but let's say resurgences and emergences, even though this isn't what I would normally do, the fact that we get a core out of this is sufficient for me. So we'll read the description first. Resurgences and emergences, birth and death are only directions. Between the two, we find a crossroads. Moth and Grail, the gods from stone made a law that the keys of dream cannot be held or owned. The time of stone is past, but the keys remain, so the holders of these keys can only be the 7 legions whose crime has set them outside the law, and the legions serve an hour of Moth and Grail. When the last remnants of the gods from stone are renewed, the law will be renewed with them. Preservation is the wisdom of renewal. Okay, so our first commitment, well, skill commitment, that is. Injecting a little gaiety. Zachary asks Corso to teach him a prayer in Hyksos, in case I should die when I wake. Okay, so obviously that could have saved us the money for the Hyksos lesson, but we couldn't know that ahead of time. I'll try and use the Hyksos to level up another skill, but nice to know that I have the option. Oh, Zachary asked Corso for a prayer in Hyksos. These two might say something else on the matter if you invite them both back for another salon. Okay, so I'm going to start making some notes on these pairings. So this means that I'm more likely to invite Zachary and Corso for future salons. Although, honestly, this one worked pretty well for me, so this might be a batch that I just bring back normally. Oh, and one more. Okay, say something witty, add a Shapt card. Stanislav and Fraser discuss the work of the entomologist Juliana Zawadzowski. Fraser is firmly of the belief that she bore within her the nature of the threetage kind of the Carapace cross. Lesson Stone Stories. So I'm going to have quite a bit to get through the autumn, but that is not a hardship. All right, night has fallen, dawn will come soon. Let's make sure that I keep my wild surmise. Dream on a memory. Now that night has fallen, I can rest and perhaps dream on the day's doings. Dreaming on a memory will preserve it past dawn, allowing you to keep it until the following day. A lively meal concludes. My guests leave happy. You've gained an additional potent memory. All right. So again, that was a really good salon for us. Even though I've been pretty tight-fisted with the memories, this one, we were able to get everything we needed, and we really only committed one thing that I was a little reluctant to add at the time. So now the hard business is... the hard business is trying to make the most of these lessons before we run out of time. So we got a curious hunch for our trouble. Happy about that. The clouds and the satisfaction will go away without any further intervention. So we've got the stone stories, Hyksos. Oh, hang on. Did we already have a curious hunch? Maybe we did. Great signs and great scars. Orchids of narcotics, 2 of them. Serpents and venoms. Okay, so first of all, we've got Grail and Heart, and we've got Moon and Moth. So if I have opportunities to level that stuff up, I want to take it. Now, under normal circumstances, I would say let's just commit whatever we don't have into the consider verb. But right now, we actually want to make sure that we're making the most of the memories that I have. So for instance, Orchids and Narcotics. Okay, so this one's a pretty high candidate for Orchids and Narcotics is a pretty high candidate for being the one I commit, and that's because I'll be able to make something of the satisfaction. Okay, haven't acquired Serpents and Venoms yet, so the only other candidate here would be Stone Stories. Now that is already at its higher level, so with the existing memories I have here, unless I employ something like the Old Wound, Occult Scrap, or Curious Hunch, I don't have much I can do with that. As it is, it's a scale. So it would work with the health, but I don't have what it takes to put that together. Let's see here. I could also use it to level up Insects and Nectars, Coil and Chasm, Herbs and Infusions, Leaves and Thorns. There's actually quite a few that I can elevate it with. But again, I don't have anything in the existing the memories that are going to go away in a minute. The only other thing I can think of here would be we have something with the Hyksos, because that does give me Edge and Grail. And in particular, I'm thinking if I use that to level up, I'm probably not going to do this, but I am just curious. If I already used that for Edict's Marshal, so I could use the Arab there. We'd have the clouds. We'd have the no, right, because it's not moon. Yeah, so we give up too much. I am tempted to use the Hyksos to bring up Edict's Marshal. I'm going to need a bit of a think on that, because there's also some of these which can get up to level 2 as well. But I think I've made my decision in terms of how I'm going to use these memories. So we're going to learn Orchids and Narcotics. So use this lesson to acquire a new skill. We may lose the Arab over the course of the day, but I'm willing to give that up. So basically what we do here is we take the Orchids and Narcotics with the satisfaction. It's probably going to be morning by the time that finishes, so we'll be down the Arab or when we get it to level 2. But we don't need to worry about using any lessons to try and bring back satisfaction or anything like that. So we're still ahead, because it would take, basically it would take me 2 memories in my current, sorry, if I don't do this tonight, it would take me 2 memories to generate the memory and commit the memory to level 2. Whereas here, I'm just using this overnight and achieving the same thing. So there's always more to learn. Improve the skill to level 2. And this is for Orchids and Narcotics. There is no greed without beauty. So in this case, the clouds probably aren't going to be used for anything interesting. I'll definitely add in Great Signs and Great Scars in the morning. But the real questions here are going to be what we do with Hyksos and Stone Stories. And again, I'm not that worried about clouds. It's most days the weather goes by without incident. Okay, yeah, so as expected, 10 seconds late on the Arab, but we definitely got what we needed. Now I'm actually, so in addition to being really happy with how the Salon turned out, I'm actually also really happy with the lessons that we got, because these 2 I can basically commit for free. The Hyksos, again, I think I'm probably going to put into Edicts Martial, but I'll have a think about that one. So it's really just the Stone Stories that's an open question in terms of how I'm going to use it. And again, under the how the lessons work, I can use it to level up Coil and Chasm, Insects and Nectars, Herbs and Infusions, or Furs and Feathers, Path and Pilgrim, and Wolf Stories. So I don't necessarily need to push this further unless I see a particular advantage to bringing Stone Stories up to a certain level. But that Cylon did take us through today's first episode, so I may actually take a break in terms of recording these and just do the rest of the weeks tomorrow my time. But yeah, basically the plan for the rest of the season, add in the lessons that I can. Those aren't hard to do. Actually, Stone Stories could also bring Serpents and Venoms up to level 2. But then I guess the question is, why am I doing that instead of Horns and Ivories or something? I don't know. I'll have a think about it. But yeah, so 2 lessons that'll take a minute. If I use Hyksos for Edicts Martial, I'm probably going to need a bit to... Well, it's not that hard. I mean, three memories isn't that hard to generate. So yeah, I think the Stone Stories is going to be the one that really gives me a bit of a puzzle to think about. But I'm weakly preferring raising up the lower level skills rather than trying to push forward, like trying to get Stone Stories to a higher level. We'll see how I feel after the recording, though. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we will see you on Wednesday in the next episode. Take care until then.